Hello everyone, I am Parker. Today is the second session of Expanding Your Imagination. After the first episode was broadcasted, some friends reached out to me and provided a few suggestions. First of all, they pointed out that the recording environment was not very good and quite noisy. I apologize for this inconvenience, as my work and living environment are in a bustling area. There might be some background noise, and I hope everyone can understand. I prefer to record this program directly regardless of the quality of the audio. Later there will be subtitles in the video, so if anyone has difficulty hearing clearly, you can refer to the subtitles. I hope everyone can understand and bear with this arrangement. Now let's get back on track. The theme of this lecture is family affection. I started with this topic because, as I explained earlier, I am following a chronological order from a person's birth to aging, discussing various issues related to family relationships, social connections, and more. When it comes to family affection, I believe it is a unique emotion in human society that cannot be replaced by any other. It can be said that family affection is the most special and fundamental human emotion in our lives. The reason why we are discussing family affection in this lecture is that it is the most steadfast and stable among all emotions in human society. It is also one of the most primitive attributes of human beings. If we discard family affection, we would truly deviate from our human nature and cease to be human. Therefore, we must not violate this natural order and treat family affection as a mere transaction. In reality, there are instances where family affection is held hostage, and this represents a distortion of human nature. However, merely knowing or understanding human emotions is not enough, because many issues arise within family affection. Why do these problems occur? Below we will explain them one by one. First, parents and children. Firstly, we must clarify two premises in this relationship. The first premise is that parents cannot control the birth of their children. Harshly put, no parents can design their children, including their appearance, intelligence, height, and so on. It is beyond their control and not a matter of choice. The birth of children is an essential process in social development. If humans do not reproduce, the human race would have long perished. The second premise, from a subjective perspective, is that parents do not have anyone forcing them to have children. Of course, there may be some elders who urge their children to have grandchildren as soon as possible and similar situations. However, no one will hold a knife or gun to force you to have children. So the birth of a child is, first and foremost, willingly accepted by the parents, regardless of any justifications. This is a fact. Secondly, the birth of a child can bring a harmonious relationship to the family, but at the same time it can also bring forth many challenges and issues. From the time of a child's birth until they reach an understanding, parents have no reason to demand anything from their child. It is the responsibility and duty of parents to raise and educate their children. This point is explicitly stated in the laws of any country. The significant question arises: as parents, they must raise and educate their children, but who do these children belong to once they grow up? Many people do not understand this question, and some have even argued with me when discussing it, saying that there is no sense of ownership involved. In reality, it does exist, but many people are simply turning a blind eye to it. All parents believe that since they have raised their children, the children naturally belong to them. However, this question becomes significant because when children grow up, they will venture into society to strive for their own success and independent living. So the question is, at that time, do the children still belong to their parents? If children belong solely to their parents, then why would parents have a reason to let their children venture into society and face challenges they could just provide for them directly? So why do parents allow their children to gain experience, become independent, and even expect them to take care of them in their old age or provide financial support? Why is that? This is similar to a big tree which represents your family. As parents, when your child grows up and becomes an adult, they are like the fruit of that tree. Once the fruit is ripe, you have no reason and no way to keep it on your tree. It needs its soil and has to grow into another big tree. Therefore, in the relationship between children and parents, many people do not understand how This sense of ownership works after children grow up and enter society and establish their independent families. They cannot wholeheartedly belong to their parents and serve them as they did when they were young. They have to take responsibility for themselves and the families they create. They can no longer rely on their parents entirely. It is not realistic at this stage. Family affection manifests in various forms, or we can call it issues that arise. So we must be clear: a child's life belongs to themselves, not to any parents. This is a conceptual issue in many countries, including some Southeast Asian countries. This traditional belief remains unchanged as their society develops. However, the problem is that it is wrong. You cannot treat children as your private property. Once children grow up and become adults, they must go out into society, strive for themselves, have their own families, and live independently. Secondly, children are the hope of the family. The question of children being the hope of the family is beyond doubt and holds for every ethnicity and family. The majority of families worldwide share this sentiment. Of course, there might be some exceptional cases, but those are few and far between, and we don't need to dwell on them. Regarding the concept of hope between families and children, there are indeed many differences. First, let's consider a normal middle-class family with a decent income. They have high hopes and expectations for their children's future success, aiming for significant achievements. The desire for their children to excel like a dragon rising to the sky is a common phenomenon. The majority of normal families, especially after the birth of a child, hold numerous expectations, and bluntly speaking, many of these are fantasies. With these expectations, they hope their children will grow up healthily, receive a good education, and eventually achieve a high level of success in the future. Among other aspirations, there are indeed abnormal family reactions as well. For instance, in impoverished countries and regions, their hopes for their children may be uncertain, and sometimes even the parents themselves don't know what to expect. In some remote, backward, and impoverished areas, even in certain countries, there may be minimal expectations for children. However, there are still many so-called hopes, like hoping that when their children grow up and succeed, the parents' own lives will change. Using a colloquial term, borrowing the child's light. Of course, not all families have high expectations, but this can lead to another serious issue: a desire to have more children. Why have more children? Because they don't know which child might succeed, become successful, or bring wealth. Thus, they pin their hopes on having more children. From their perspective, if one of them becomes successful, it will change their lives. This seems like a gamble based on probabilities. The mentality of this parent appears to be purely selfish and self-serving. How do we interpret such a form of family affection? We can discuss it further later. In some economically disadvantaged countries and ethnic groups, the arrival of a child may be met with an indifferent attitude. They might take a child's birth as a matter of fact, especially in extremely impoverished families where they hope for a male child to quickly help them with their livelihood and food problems. Considering the child merely as a labor force or a tool to be used, we cannot ignore this phenomenon because it is prevalent in many impoverished countries and regions. Therefore, understanding the concept of children being the hope of the family involves several aspects. Let's discuss and analyze these aspects one by one using our big tree thinking mode theory. The first aspect pertains to the so-called normal middle-class families, or families that are relatively well off and not worried about their basic needs. Their expectation for their children is often the desire for them to excel and achieve great success in life. There is a saying that goes, "Don't let the children lose at the starting line." But the question is, what is this starting line? To be blunt, the starting line is the parents themselves. Have you as parents ever considered that the child's starting point originates from you? If the child fails, it is not their failure but yours. As parents, many parents fail to reflect on their conditions and constantly place their hopes, expectations, and demands on society and others. But today I must speak bluntly: if not you as parents, then who is responsible for the child's starting line? The child is born into your family, and it is from your family that they start to develop and move forward. How they progress and develop is influenced by the quality of education you provide why many parents entirely shift this responsibility to society, schools, or teachers, which is entirely wrong. Although I mentioned earlier that a child's future and destiny belong to themselves and their life belongs to society, the education they receive and the education they should receive come from their parents. As parents, you must assist your children, otherwise what is the meaning of this family affection? What's the point of talking about family affection at all regarding the issue of children? I believe that as any parent, regardless of the environment and conditions, if you have hopes and expectations for your child's future, such as the desire for them to achieve great success, you should first examine and scrutinize your capabilities. The first question to consider is your knowledge. Do you possess enough knowledge to support your assistance and education for your child, and to uphold your hopes for them? The second question is, what kind of education do you want to provide for your child? Do you want your child to compete with others? What can they use to compete? Many people may argue that just because they didn't attend university doesn't mean they can't encourage their child to do so. However, that's not the point. What you leave for your child may not be specific knowledge, but you can instill in them the best thinking patterns. If you understand and can teach your child this thinking pattern from an early age, it becomes a habit, and then how could they not progress or meet your expectations unless your expectations are unrealistic dreams? Therefore, as parents, regardless of the conditions or reasons, you should be aware of this issue in your child's education. Specific knowledge can be taught by schools and teachers, but no one else can instill thinking patterns in them to truly help your child develop and improve. You must recognize the importance of a good thinking pattern. The reason I wrote this theory of the big tree mindset is actually to tell everyone that we live in a complex and rapidly developing society, and we must rely on ourselves rather than others. If we don't have a sound mindset, how can we expect others to achieve it? In fact, in the whole world, among all ethnic groups and in most families, the most significant failure in child education lies precisely in this aspect. Therefore, if you truly want your children to excel and you don't want them to lose at the starting line, then you must improve your abilities and develop a sound mindset. Only by doing so can you provide your children with proper guidance and education in the future. This way they can stand out in their studies and fulfill your wish for them to achieve greatness. Otherwise, everything will be mere empty talk. The second aspect involves another type of family and their hopes for their children. This phenomenon is more prevalent in relatively impoverished regions or countries where there is a traditional belief in the concept of more children, more blessings. However, I find this belief to be impractical. Let's consider the following scenario. If a family is so poor that they struggle to provide enough food for themselves, insisting on having more children will only increase their burden. In some countries, families may seek help from the government through subsidies and assistance, but in others they are left to cope with their situation without any external support. In such circumstances, the idea of more children, more blessings becomes baseless and unrealistic. However, in these families there are several aspects to consider regarding their hopes for their children. One is the reliance on government or others' help, and then when the child grows a little, they have to start serving the family. As long as they can move, they have to work for the family, which is a widespread phenomenon. As for going to school, it is inevitable because it is a legal requirement in many countries by the government. After receiving an education, they place their hopes on becoming wealthy in the future, becoming rich, and so on. In reality, these ideas, to be blunt, are extremely foolish. There might also be instances where a child succeeds through hard work and becomes wealthy but still cannot fulfill the dreams and expectations of their parents. To be frank, such parents continue to treat their children as slaves, as mere tools to earn money. Ultimately, the outcome for these people won't be too favorable. Think about it. Even if one of the children becomes wealthy, they still have to support their own family. Moreover, some who have come from rural areas and become wealthy may undergo significant changes in their nature. They might even look down upon you as parents, disdain your impoverished circumstances, or belittle your struggles and selfish demands. They might harbor many complaints and even resentment towards you as parents because they believe that you, as parents, didn't work hard enough and didn't provide them with a starting point as rich second-generation individuals. In essence, They may see it as your fault, so if we were to seriously investigate whose ideology is mistaken here, I believe it is the mindset of the parents that is at fault. Think about it. You demand your children to become wealthy and support you, but if they were to respond, they might ask, why didn't you work hard? Why couldn't you become wealthy and make me a rich second generation so I wouldn't have to toil so hard to earn money? Although they may not express these thoughts aloud, many people share the same sentiment. They might feel hesitant or unwilling to talk about their perception of their parents, but that doesn't mean those thoughts don't exist. I've encountered many individuals like this. They have achieved financial success and built their careers, but they aren't very filial to their parents. At most, they give some money and call it a day, saying something about providing financial support, but they're unwilling to truly spend time with their parents. Parents often have many demands and conditions, but to be frank, those parents should take a good look in the mirror and reflect on their character. The child's success is not because of the parents' efforts, and after reaching adulthood, the child has no obligation to spend all the money earned on the parents or to constantly accompany and serve them. Are you emperors? Who do you think you are? To be honest, the existence of such parents is an insult to their successful children. Although no one likes to openly talk about their parents' shortcomings, it doesn't mean these issues don't exist. Don't consider yourselves as emperors. You are not, and you are nothing special. So when it comes to the initial hope and expectations of having children, I've spoken so much to help you understand how this hope should be approached and obtained. Don't just push everything onto others and enjoy the benefits without effort. Also, don't treat your children as mere tools for making money or even as servants in your old age. If you do so, you don't belong to humanity anymore, because you've lost the fundamental aspect of human nature, which is basic familial affection. Due to time constraints, we will stop here today. We will continue in the next session. Thank you, everyone.